Hello, welcome to Web of Stories. My name is Melinda, and I am filming this on a day I was not planning on doing a video. I have another video I'm working on, but I wasn't quite ready to film it. My son is running around. My husband is out grilling in the rain. It's just that kind of day. But, you can hear my son opening the closet door. I came across a tag that I was tagged. I was tagged by Pat at Book Chat. And I was tagged by her 2 weeks ago, and I finally got to the video. Sorry, Pat. But I love this tag so much. I said, I'm just gonna do this. And this is let me get the title right here, the Roadmap of Your Life book tag. So there are two questions. The first one is, and this was created by Tristan at Tristan L Spacebooks, okay? So there's only two questions here. The first one is, what is a book that reminds you of or takes place in each place that you've lived? This could mean country, state, province, city, town, or apartment house. Just come up with a book that really resonates you and the time you spent in each place that you've had a mailing address. So the first place I lived, I was born in California at an Air Force base, and I have no memory of it, so I wasn't going to include it. But then I remembered this past spring break. If you've been following me for a few months, you know spring break did not go as planned. We went down to Arizona to see my dad. We got COVID. He ended up in the hospital, ironically not for COVID. And we ended up having to drive back to Oregon through California, which my kids have always been like, we want to go to California. And I said, okay, now you get to go to California. And we went up through the middle of California, which is like, they're like, this is California? I said, yeah. But anyway, I was born on an Air Force base in California. And while we were getting close to this Air Force base, I was telling my kids, hey, I was born here. Gramps was stationed here, blah, blah, blah. And I noticed that it's kind of in the agricultural area. And there's a lot of cabbage fields there. And that made me think of this book that I read 2 summers ago. You can tell I quite loved it. And that's East of Eden by John Steinbeck. So this takes place near Salinas, California, which is a couple hours away from where I was born, but it's still kind of sort of the same. And so when we're driving up past this we did not stop at the Air Force base. My husband's not military. I don't have a military ID anymore now that I'm over 18. And so there's no reason to stop, but we did drive through it. So while we're driving through this, I'm reminded of two things at once. Obviously, I'm not reminded of living there because I don't remember it, but just the whole thing that I was born here, but also this book. And because this book is really about it's a retelling of Cain and Abel, or inspired by Cain and Abel. Cain and Abel is kind of a thing in here. And, but it's also about the building of this area of California. And it really reminded me of that. So that's where I was born. All right, now, I spent most of my growing up life, well, actually from the time I was a year old until I went off to college, in Salem, Oregon. And Salem, Oregon is famous for exactly one book. One book. And sadly, I had not read this book nor seen the movie until last year. One book. And it is this one. It's a classic, though. It's a well-known book. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by Ken Kesey. So this is set at the Oregon State Hospital, which was the mental hospital in Salem. We'd always drive by it. It's a pretty large compound, but what is actually used as the state hospital now is very small. They have a museum there that talks about the history of, my son's walking around the house with an umbrella. I just don't know. It talks about the history. They have a museum that talks about the history of mental health care in the area, and also dedicated to both this book and the movie. And the movie was filmed in Salem. So if you ever see the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, that's really where everything took place. Except in the book, they go to Florence to go fishing. And in the movie, I don't think they name the place, but it's Depot Bay. But otherwise, it's exactly where it is. But this is a book that, everyone says, you should read it. You're from Salem. And I just never did. And then I finally did last year. And this is a really fantastic book. I really like this book. I mean, it's a tough book in a lot of ways. It really is. I liked it better than the movie. I know the movie is a classic, but I think that the just because of the narration of the book, which I'm not going to get into, but the narration of the book, you lose that in the movie. But One Flew Over Cuckoo's Nest, the place is still there. And then I had to actually go and look this one up because I do not have a copy of this book anymore. But I went to school at the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. And when I was 15 years old, we went to Washington, D.C. for spring break. And right before that, now I had my heart at this point, there's something weird with my camera, sorry. I had my heart set on going to Georgetown. And we went to Washington, D.C. We saw Georgetown. I was like, nope, not the place, not the place. But I had read this book, and it's called Tidewater Dynasty, a biographical novel of the Lees of Stratford Hall by Carey Roberts and Rebecca Seeley. I believe at least one of them is a Lee descendant. And it talks about the Lee family being established. It doesn't go all the way up to Robert E. Lee, but it's like a lot of the famous Lees, the signers of the Declaration of Independence, the early Lees are in there. And I just love this book. It's a family saga, great book, beautiful sense of place. Good and bad caveat there. I read this in the late 80s. Let me see when this was published. This was published in 1981. There are probably things, if I were to read it now, that I would find objectionable. Just putting that out there. Because, first of all, 1981 was a different time. But also, the Lees were kind of objectionable. They did some things that were kind of objectionable. But I just fell in love with that area. So I said, well, let's go down and see this part of Virginia. So we went down to Virginia. And when we were down there, we said, let's go do a tour of William and Mary while we were there. So we did. And I said, this is where I need to go. And that's where I ended up going, which is lucky. I only applied to one school. So I'm really glad I got in because it would have been bad had I not gotten in. But yeah, so Williamsburg. So then after graduation, I moved back to Salem for just a little bit. And then I moved to Boston to work. And this one is going to be no surprise because there's a book that I just think of Boston, although most of it does not take place in Boston. And that is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. Sorry for that jump. My husband is watching me. So this actually takes place in Concord, which is outside of Boston, although she goes to Boston for a bit in it. And we did one time when my parents were visiting, because I didn't have a car when I lived in Boston, because I'm not suicidal. We went to Concord and we saw Louisa May Alcott's house. And, we saw the room where her sister May, who's Amy in the book, like drew on the walls. And there's just, this book just makes me think of Boston in a good way. I should preface that because Boston wasn't my favorite place to live, but this book brings back all the good memories from Boston. Okay, so the next book I don't have a copy of, and I don't know why I don't have a copy of it. I thought I had I think I have it digitally, maybe? I don't know. But when I moved back from Boston, I moved to Beaverton, Oregon, which is a suburb of Portland. And this is going to sound weird, but my book for this is Beautiful Ruins by Jess Walter. And I'm thinking, hey, man, this book is set in like Italy. What are you talking about? There's a character in that book who lives in Beaverton, who's from Beaverton. And I remember reading that book, and I was living in Beaverton at the time going, oh, look, it's Beaverton. It's very exciting to see where you live in a place. And he did a pretty good job of, there's not a lot of Beaverton in there, but there's that connection. So when I think of books about Beaverton, I think of a book set in Italy, Beautiful Ruins by Jess Walter. Plus, if you know me, you know I love Jess Walter. So man can do no wrong. And then finally, I live in Hillsborough, which is actually the town just west of Beaverton. And I don't have a specific book for Hillsborough, but I do have a book of my favorite place, and it is my favorite book of all time, and it is Mink River. You knew this was coming. If you follow me, you knew this was coming. So this book's actually set on the Oregon coast, but I read it when I lived in Hillsborough. It's set on a fictional community on the Oregon coast, but it is a community that you would find on the Oregon coast. There's no actual time given when this is. Doyle doesn't tell you when this book is set, but you can kind of tell from context clues that it is set if you know kind of what's gone on. You could tell it's like late 70s, early 80s, because the timber industry is in a decline, but the tourist industry on the Oregon coast is still sort of limited to a couple cities townish cities on the coast. And now, if you go to the Oregon coast, it's all touristy. But this is set before that happened in a small town. And it's just a beautiful story of a town. Some magical realism. That's a talking crow. Yes, that's a character in the book. Magical realism. It brings, I mean, I have never read a book that brought a place to life like Mink River does. It's gorgeous. My one hint, don't get the audiobook of this. It's no good. Read the book. So that is my first question. That is my roadmap. Now, let me look up the second question now. Okay, that jump was because we're having a barbecuing, a grilling emergency. It started raining before we were done grilling, so my husband is trying to move everything into the oven. That happens in Oregon. But now, second question. Since a roadmap not only shows you where you've been, but also where you're going, what is a book that reminds you or takes place in your next destination or place you'd like to live? So for this one, I have 2 books that I have not yet read. I pulled them off my little TBR shelf, but that's okay. They actually both take place in places I've been, but places that I will probably, well, hopefully, we're tentatively trying to figure this out for next summer. So the first one is Goddesses and Divine Might, Goddesses in Greek Myth by Natalie Haynes. And the other is A Day of Fire, a novel of Pompeii by a bunch of people. Kate Quinn is the top one. So my daughter, as I have mentioned before, loves Greek mythology. She just wants to go to Greece. She wants to go to Greece, and we want to take her to Greece. And then my son, just a couple days ago, I asked him, he just finished 7th grade. I said, what is something that you learned about in school this year that you want to learn more about? And he looked at me, that's keyword, he looked at me and said, the Roman Empire. He's a man in the making. He's already obsessed with the Roman Empire. And this is Pompeii, but it's still the Roman Empire. So we are kind of trying to figure out a trip for next summer that hits both places. My husband suggested a cruise. I'm actually not a huge fan of cruises. I did one when I was a kid with my parents. But the more I think about it, I think actually a cruise might not be a bad idea for this particular trip. I prefer to just kind of go out and do everything and be on my own, and but with 4 of us, it might be easier, and the kids, it might just be easier to do a cruise. So we're kind of looking at that. We'll probably do one. Also, the one cruise I'm looking at also hits Sicily, and if you also know that, like, in the last 2 months, I've read 3 books set in Sicily, so apparently I want to go to Sicily. We're still trying to figure that out, but hopefully next summer we will go to Greece and, well, Pompeii, Rome, whatever. My husband, on our honeymoon, we went all through Europe. We did go to Rome, and we had plans when we were in Rome to do one day to go to Naples and then go to Pompeii. But it was kind of towards the end of our trip, and we were just tired, so we'd rather just stay in Rome. So my husband has yet to see Pompeii. I have been to Pompeii, but they've uncovered a lot more since I've been there. So I'm excited to go back to that. And of course, Rome is my favorite foreign city, so I really want to go there. And now my son's like all into the Roman Empire, because he's a guy. And there you go. So thank you. You know what? I have this new thing I'm doing for tagging. I always tag 3 people, and I always I never know who to tag. And I should pull up, I may accidentally tag someone that Pat tagged or someone else tagged, because again, it took me 2 weeks to see this video, but I'm going to I have names on here, and I'm going to pull them out and see who I tag. So first, this is a good one because she travels and has lived different places. Caitlin at Bandy's Books. Who else? Jennifer at Jennifer Loves Books, and Sandy at Ms. Reads a Lot. So those are who I'm tagging this time. It's completely random. Yeah. So that's who I'm tagging. And I'm sorry, Pat, it took me so long to do this because it was a great tag, and you can hear my son come in. I don't think I can edit that out. So there you go. Thank you very much if you stayed through this mess of a video. I just was so excited about this tag. And subscribe, join my Discord. I promise not all my videos are this chaotic, but they might be for the next couple months because my kids are home from school. That's just life. Thank you, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.